Welcome back, everybody. You got Will and I-Man here from the Block Runner MetaZone, Rovi, and Mscribe, and today we're going to be talking about some DMT updates, UNAT, Redacted,
Mscribe,
yeah.
block pads. What are those?
Yeah.
What are
What's a block
those?
pad?
Yeah, we're used to launch pads, right?
Yeah.
kinda-
Old, lame.
Yeah, we're down with the old, in with the new.
Yeah.
That's what we do here. So some things have been happening. Has been what's the word? I don't know. Happening.
Yeah.
Over the last couple of months since NAT cats came about, and then there was kind of like a flurry of UNET deployments after that.
Mm-hmm.
The ecosystem quickly ran into some like friction points, right? And one creator in particular made it pretty clear, abundantly clear, that this is a problem that needed to be solved.
Mm-hmm.
King Punk Ape, right? The founder of the Redacted collection, which is we've been working pretty closely with them for I'd say about a month.
Yep.
So we're gonna kind of showcase what that month of development has kind of led to, and we've been working with Benny and Track as well, because as you all know, TAP is the critical infrastructure layer to support everything DMT at the moment. So without it, if we don't have an extendability, functional
Correct.
token protocol, DMT could not exist, right? So it's been quite the effort for the last month to kind of piece all these puzzles together to ultimately get to the end game goal of a viable ecosystem for creators, right?
Right.
That can coexist with every other native ordinal out there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So on Thursday, we conducted a test of this new functionality from Track, which is called Privilege Authorization.
Mm-hmm.
And it was funny. We had the test, and I think the next day we had a judge. We had a judge Lambda protocol. Some of the developers creating stuff on Lambda,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of the people that were there joined the test, and they were like, it was like a big shit show.
Yeah.
And then finally everybody got to mint.
Yeah. So I guess big thank yous are due
Yeah.
for the people who stuck with us because it was quite the brutal testing process, dude. Because I mean, it took 5 hours to kind of crank through some of the initial bugs to get.
Yeah.
And we're going to show you what the actual what it was we were striving to activate.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, for the most part, there was a lot of people concurrently waiting.
Yeah.
And but most people did not see the show, and that's why we're showing the show today.
Pretty much, yeah. So there's a couple of things we were trying to achieve here. It's not just cleaning up the DMT ecosystem space for creators who want to create digital matter, right?
Yeah.
That is one of the main primitives of concern that we were trying to address with implementing things along with Track, like privilege authorization, and then creating the front end interface for these creators deploying these tokens to kind of set these parameters for their mints. But it was also we want to change the entire minting experience.
Yeah.
Completely. Revamp the whole thing. We had these two parallel goals we needed to execute on by the time Redacted launches.
Right? Yeah, make mint fun again or something.
Make minting fun again?
Yeah, there you go.
I don't know if minting was ever fun, to be honest.
It was never fun.
That's the point. Minting has always just been a means to an end.
Yeah, pushing a button. Yeah.
Push a button, give me my shit, and then let me speculate.
Yeah.
That's basically been the provisions of Web3 up until now. So it's you know what? We could do so much more. The act of minting can be a whole fucking endeavor of excitement in itself.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about that. So we had that test, and man, let's see where we start. So we outlined the problem. It was concentrated mints. There was a few actors that would launch UNAT projects, and they would just kind of mint 10% to themselves or whatever it is, and try to pump it and basically dump it, and that was pretty much it.
Yeah, you'd have 10,000 supply with 200-300 holders.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is a non-starter.
Yeah.
For a community, for an ecosystem.
Yeah. And even something as organic as NatCats, because they launched before anyone even knew the concept of a UNAT.
Yeah.
And it had a 550 holders.
Mm-hmm. For 8,000 supply.
For 8,000 supply. And now it's almost 4,000.
Yeah, 3,500s, that is a healthy distribution, right?
Yeah.
A 40 to 50%.
Yeah.
That's what you see in typically most ordinal collections that are, you know, regarded as potential blue chip contenders, right? So that's what we're trying to do, is foster that same ecosystem starting point for you know, NAT deployers.
Yeah. So now that we've outlined these problems, like what are the solutions? Right, better distribution. Artists, they need to put food on the table, right? So they want to sell their art, right? Yeah. So we have distribution, we have the ability to sell, limits per wallet. So now you can limit 1 per wallet, 10 per wallet, whatever.
Yeah, and it just implementing any kind of whitelist parameters also.
Whitelist parameters, yeah, as well.
Allow lists, so that can be utilized in any infinite array of different directions, right? Whether you want to implement some sort of gamification aspect to who qualifies for your mints, or just simply, I don't know, engagement parameters. You know, this community members have been super engaged, therefore I can now whitelist them. These things, you know, it's, again, these are normalities in like the non-fungible token space. Up in, like we've grown accustomed to these things, so they should be part of the DMT ecosystem, right?
Yeah. And so finally, with all these problems outlined, we're like, hey, Benny, we need like a solution to this. Like, we can't have like this rogue actors like take advantage of everything, right? Yeah. And so we were in collaboration trying to figure out a way to do this. Finally, it comes out Privilege Authorization. It solves all these problems.
Yes.
Right. And so what you're looking at here is the actual mint interface. And so when we launched this, it was all orange. And then you can see here that right now there's 890 currently connected, right? And they're sitting there waiting. It's like, when next test, right?
Yeah, because we did one successful test. 2,000 of these have been claimed, but there's, as you can see, the orange ones are still up for grabs, right? So
and so the limit was 2,000 for this test out of the 8,000. So that was the first test. It's like, can we get only 2,000 mints? And as you can see here, the 1,963 holders, roughly circulating supply 2,293. So the reason why there's even this much discrepancy is because there was a bug in the interface that allowed people to mint more than one.
Right. Hence, this is why we test, lads.
Yeah. But even having said that, even with this bug, there's a near 1-to-1 correlation between a mint and a holder.
Yeah, which is what we were trying to achieve, right? Yeah. So because of that, so it works, in other words. It's like now creators have some more controls to implement something that's more fair and balanced, right? According to that creator's discretion, right?
Yeah.
It is up to the creator. What are my parameters that I want to set for my ecosystem? Like, it's very important. It's the tool that creators need.
Yeah.
Because if you leave it open to, then anybody can come in and just kind of like soil the sentiment from the rip.
Correct.
And that's not good for growth opportunity.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And so now with this ability, a creator can set 1 per wallet and then do a launch, whitelist, do an open mint, do a completely free distribution, just claim your asset. Totally up to you. And that's it. So we ran it. People jumped in. They claimed all of these blocks. Let me see if I can zoom out. So this is what 8,000 blocks looks like. Yeah. And the purple ones are still in the mempool. So someone decided to pay very, very little for their fee, which you could do that because there's no way to get front ran.
Yeah.
Right. You can't snipe into these transactions because the way that token authorization or privilege authorization is set up is that there's an embedded JSON with data in there that the minter is the only one who can receive a valid one.
Okay.
And so even though like if someone tried to snipe it, they would receive the inscription, but it would be invalid.
Interesting.
Yeah, because they don't have their address inside that JSON with a signature. So I'm going to show you what all that looks like.
Yeah.
So let's show everybody what it actually looks like when this thing runs, because it was fascinating.
Yeah.
Right. So I recorded the whole thing, by the way.
Okay, good. I'm glad you did that.
And so let me take you through the story while we wait here. So we decided to move it 1 block into the future. And so what you're looking at here is everybody is in the waiting room.
Yeah, the one thing that's missing here is like an actual like waiting room user count. And that will be added eventually. Like just like there's a spectator and a user count on the actual Blockpad page.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's missing here. But assume there's thousands of people looking at this concurrently, which is exactly what was happening, because once everybody got through to the other side, thousands of people will show up. And
Yeah.
You'll see.
Correct. And so everybody's waiting here. So this is just picture this. I'm on the call with the devs. We're all like listening and talking to each other. It's like, okay, we're ready to go.
Yeah.
Let's move it into the one block into the future.
Yeah.
And then what do you know? The block takes over 1 hour to mine.
Perfectly acceptable.
And
This is Bitcoin we're dealing with.
Yeah.
This is non-arbitrary.
And so I'm there sitting, chatting with everybody, like waiting to mint this for hours, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like having conversations on Discord. I was like, yeah, this is a 50-minute wait. This is a 60-minute wait for mining one single block.
Yeah, you can imagine the pitchforks were out in like full force, dude.
Yeah.
People were ready to like just completely
It's like burn the house down, dude.
Yeah, just stop this pain and suffering.
Yeah,
you guys
it's just like, let's just wait till tomorrow or reschedule it. And
it was quite the spectacle. If any of you guys were there, you know exactly what we're talking about. And we tried our best to manage the situation.
Yeah,
5 hours.
Play along, really. Like,
yeah, some of you guys got totally discouraged and like bounced, but that's why those who stuck through to the end, they secured their whitelist spot in this redacted launch and the first, I guess, iteration of Mscribe royalty, right?
Correct.
I think we talked about already, but it's the crown.
Yeah,
it's the Mscribe crown, which will hold high esteem within the DMT ecosystem. Is my prediction.
Yeah.
Into the future. I mean that is like the ultimate flex, dude. I was there.
Yeah.
When we're testing the actual mechanisms to bring about like sustainable collections in the DMT space. Like, I don't know how that's. I mean, we're talking about provenance, dude.
Right.
That's provenance in its most shiniest of fashions.
And everybody helped us test this like new technology, right? This is you cannot do this with any other like meta protocol. It's only on tap.
Correct.
Yeah. And then so suddenly it just pops, like it finally gets mined, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, we got the spectators like connecting, and then let me fast forward a little bit.
Yeah.
And then it's like, wait a minute, something's not working. I was like, oh, I just have to push this other button, and then all of a sudden we have all these people trickle in right there. Hold on, let's see if we can play this in real time. Let's see.
Might need to play this at double speed, dude.
Okay,
oh, never mind.
There it goes. You see, now the users are actually connecting. It's like numbers going up. People are jumping in, and they're seeing the interface. They're starting to click on the squares to officially claim. And what is happening here is people are doing a PvP battle of claiming the squares.
Yeah.
Right? And so as soon as you click a blue square, it's blue on everybody else's screen, and you cannot claim it.
Yeah, this is basically, you say PvP because it's a shared environment. Like, this is basically like what you would expect the metaverse in its most primitive iteration to look like,
Yeah.
The metaverse is like a multiplayer shared internet.
Correct.
Right? That is one of the core like primitives of expectations to qualify as like being part of the the web, whatever, the internet, the metaverse era of things.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You're kind of like watching it right here.
Yeah. And so now if you play it long enough, it'll reach around 2,000 users. The next day it was like 3,000 after it completely minted out.
Yeah.
There was 3,000 people sitting there waiting for like the next test the next day.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're seeing here people battle it out, and
and there's like a phase here where people have no idea what the fuck's going on.
Yeah.
Because we didn't really like talk about it much, what to expect, to be honest.
Yeah.
We were just telling people, it's like, we need your help testing, and there's this crown at stake if you actually hold on for however long it takes to get this off the ground. And feedback was pretty tremendously positive, right?
Yeah, it was.
Leading up to this, it was quite the opposite. It was like, you guys fucking suck, dude. I hate you. Yeah. How dare you make me wait for however long for this test?
Yeah.
Right. But whenever it actually like all came together, it was quite the experience, right? Like, which is exactly what we're trying to like achieve. And like, we just want to set, just like we did with DMT, we created a new avenue for creation. Now we're creating another one for minting, right? Like a whole different experience.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, so I fast forwarded here a little bit, and so all of a sudden, like all these people are minting everything, and so far, like the most important thing, I didn't want to tell people like what would happen other than this is a PvP experience.
Yeah.
But I wanted this to be pretty intuitive for people to kind of like understand like how to mint. So as soon as you clicked on a square, that inscribe button would show up on the right there.
Yeah.
And then you just inscribe it. You don't have to raise. You don't have to pay a high gas fee or anything like that. You just pay like a normal fee. And at the time, it was maybe like 100 sats per VByte, which was relatively high in general.
But it's because of that hour-long block. It
Yeah,
just, it drove up the fee.
Exactly.
Which really did. It was an unfortunate coincidence, but nonetheless, it still worked.
Right.
You know. But yeah, like, so this was a test run, but for the Redacted launch, you know, each of these individual squares represents something incredibly unique, right? That is the whole purpose of this. And these squares, they do have the uniqueness, and you know, each one has its own block height.
Yeah, correct.
Within that, you know, whatever block you're claiming for this specific asset drop, you know, can have its own like future utility applications. I mean, that's just pure speculation, but and that applies to any UNAT collection. But typically, an individual block corresponds to like a whole unique rendering of an asset of some kind, like
correct
per the protocol spec, right?
Yeah.
So this is why we're testing all this. So yeah, the actual act of claiming your individual block holds like tremendous significance, right? So you kind of want to go through all the different blocks at your disposal, and it depends on who the creator is, whether or not they're gonna like pre-release the logistical components to what these blocks are going to actually result in,
right?
Or if they're gonna keep that hidden from the minters, and it's kind of like an RNG process, like you don't actually know what you're claiming. You just want a block because, I don't know, you like the number 42069.
Yeah.
And it just happens to be one of the blocks that contains the pattern native to this collection. You know, it's claimable. So I'm gonna run to that block, aka block runner.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm gonna run on this Blockpad like interface, and I'm gonna claim my block. That's the PvP aspect, right? You gotta beat everybody else.
That's right.
To that specific block.
Yeah, and so now imagine you have a bunch of creators launching their Blockpad, right? And all of a sudden you have all these people like competing for these blocks, and I feel like this is going to be a very entertaining minting experience, seeing like all these orange blocks turn blue and then purple, and then finally what you're seeing here, give me a second, is a bunch of gray blocks. So these are all the ones that are officially claimed. Yeah. They have been mined. Yeah. And so yeah, these are the 2,000 out of the 8,000 that have been actually claimed. And so now everybody has these crowns that look like this. And then these crowns, they're gonna give you access to the Redacted mint. And I want to show you what these inscriptions actually look like. So if you take one of these, you have like the traditional data for a mint inscription. We got the P, OP tick, block, and pointing to the deployment inscription. But then you have all this like weird stuff, right? Privilege. We have the signature. We have like all these V's and R's and all this like weird stuff. And
I see an S down there.
An S, yeah. And then all this is the actual signature that an authority, which is Mscribe, has to sign. And that authority gets verified by an indexer track. And then all of a sudden, within that authority, the address is the receive address. So this is my own address here. And when you mint one of these, your address will go here. And all of this is signed by the authority. And once it's signed, this is the only inscription, meaning this inscription ID is valid, right? If all these are true. Wow. And so if this gets sniped, that means the receiver is not this address and therefore is not valid. And so you just wasted a bunch of money.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've received some feedback from some people.
And this is what the crown looks like.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah. The ultimate rendering of value in its like most appreciable format.
Yeah.
3D.
That's right.
It's beautiful. It's shiny. It's glorious. But yeah, look, going back to this, ugly.
Yeah.
Disgusting looking.
Right.
Ew. Text. Yuck.
Yeah.
Jason, yucky. Like, we don't like that, right? Or some people don't like that.
Yeah.
Casey Rodimer specifically. And others, they seem to think like the Jason minting protocols are like, their days are numbered, right?
Yeah.
But we're in the opposite camp. We think there's tremendous beauty and like utility from this framework.
Yeah. Think about what happened. So we launched DMT. It was a basic JSON data, right? Pretty basic in comparison to this.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, we added functionality, right?
Correct.
As you'd want from like a development platform.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Because you can't just stay static with, like, for example, BRC20 hasn't changed in a year. You still can't do anything beyond deployment and transfer,
Yeah.
even though it's adjacent. So it needs to have like some sort of support and extendability and like just, just focus on the development aspect of it.
Correct. Yeah. And Tap and Track, they've done it. Benny, like, can't get enough credit for what he's enabled for developers, right? This right here, go back to that. That is the developer canvas right there.
Yeah.
Right. So like, and that is an art form in itself. Developers now have a way to create whatever it is we can come up with, right?
Yeah.
And implement and then ultimately render in its final form, like the content itself or whatever.
Yeah.
The application.
So yeah,
right?
let's talk about that just a little bit. So this is a real 3D model. It can be deployed in inscribed.space. It can be deployed in Bitmap OS. So this is a real 3D model, right?
Yeah.
But a 3D model embedded into Bitcoin is very expensive. So this in particular cost me around $230 to inscribe. And it's a 49 kilobyte size file. So 49 kilobytes is not that big, but it's huge on Bitcoin. $230 is not really sustainable for anybody, right?
Correct.
So, however, this mint inscription, which is the actual art here, let's take a look at what the size of this is. So if you go click on this particular transaction, you kind of scroll down, the size of this JSON is 779 bytes.
Yeah.
So it's very inexpensive. It's costs nothing in terms of like the virtual byte size. So the mempool fee doesn't really get affected by the size of the JSON inscription, in other words.
Yeah.
So this is as close to the current fee rate that you're going to get, right? And so now it's very inexpensive to mint JSON, which ends up being art. It could be an application, could be a deployable asset on Bitmap OS, could be a 3D model, could be anything.
Yeah.
And then you're just dealing with really JSON that's extendable, and now all this functionality can be added.
Yeah.
And so this is what developers want.
It is pretty crazy, and it's kind of hard to kind of explain just how many different like impactful verticals are being kind of like showcased here.
Yeah.
It is hard to contextualize it all at once, but over time, this stuff is going to become much more usable and understood, and more developers are going to, I think, take advantage of these newly introduced tools, right? But that is the point of what it is we're doing. We're working to build tools for creators, and then to demonstrate them with these different, just like NatCats did. We didn't orchestrate that at all.
Yeah,
we put out like a tool and a protocol framework, and organically a developer, artist, designer, creator showed up. Evie, shout out Evie, and utilize the protocol and its frameworks exactly how it was intended to be utilized, and created significant impact out of that, and this is the next step, right? This is the evolution of that.
Yeah.
And it should support and enable a wider spectrum of creators. Like you're saying, this isn't just for art. It's as wide as applications can go.
Yeah.
Right. And of course, rooted to all this is the fact that it's all tied back to Bitcoin's data substrate layer. That's what these blocks represent. It's like, hey, why aren't there 800,000 blocks here to be claimed? Well, it's like specifically for this collection in itself, even though it's a test one, it's pointing to an element. You can see it right there.
Yeah.
If you don't know what that signifies, like that is a pattern that exists on Bitcoin's block space.
Right? Correct. Yeah. So this particular element here is basically pointing to a pattern that's just a lot smaller than 800,000 blocks.
Yeah. It's the one NatCats uses. So we just used it again for the testing purposes. But yeah, man. So DMT is just getting started. It's fascinating. We're excited to keep working on this because, like, if you follow our podcast, like, we're just kind of fed up and sick with what we're seeing, like, in the crypto space. There's a lot of, like, regurgitation, copy pasta of, like, things that have already occurred.
Yeah.
Yesterday's innovations becoming today's, like, spam in a sense.
Yeah,
that's what it feels like. And our thesis is that's going to inspire nobody. That's not going to push the ball forward. Nobody's going to, like, come back, re-enter this space and feel reinvigorated like they did. Yeah. 3 or 4 years ago, right?
Yeah,
so
correct.
We're really working to push this out into the forefront, make this as usable as possible so that, we could do that again. We can achieve an inspiring, movement in a sense.
Yeah. Right? Yeah, and it's all non-arbitrary, which is the best part. We're utilizing Bitcoin in a new way.
Correct.
Yeah, so, all right, that's it for us. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that explanation on this Redacted launch. I think we're going to be doing another test here in the next day or so.
Yeah.
The activation block height is within 2 days, I think, from this video.
Yeah, and then around that time frame, whenever that block activation occurs, is when more details around the redacted launch itself should kind of come out.
Yeah, correct.
So yeah, we'll definitely prepare you guys so you know exactly what's coming ahead.
Yeah, yeah. So in 2 days, that activation happens, and then more redacted information. So the mint should be happening pretty soon, and in order to get access to that mint, you're gonna want to test and help us test this to make sure everything goes smoothly.
Yeah, and if you're a creator and you've already feel tickled a bit, inspired, you feel that feeling in your gut. It's like, fuck, I need to be part of this. Reach out to us because we'll work with anybody who has that kind of ambition with them.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just everybody here is a pioneer. We're all experimenting this together, right? None of this is like tried and true yet. It's like, let's see where we go with this.
Yeah. So reach out on Twitter, reach out on Discord, or comment down below, and then hopefully we can connect and see where you're at with your art or application or 3D model or whatever it is that you're working on. All right, guys. I appreciate you for watching, and we'll catch you in the next video.
Peace.